some 4 months before the month of Ramadan. My advice, as I've said, usually in durus that get this close, is if you have any outstanding fasts that you missed from Ramadan, whether it's the ladies because of pregnancy or other ladies' affairs, or it's the men because of traveling, illness, and the like. Now is really a great opportunity to make those up, because the time between Fajr and Maghrib is so short. You're looking at Fajr's time being late 5 going into 6 o'clock, and Maghrib being 4:05, and it's set to get later. It's set to get earlier. Its earliest time may be 3:55, 3:54, and Fajr's latest may be 6:30. So if you have any fast from Ramadan to make up, this is an excellent opportunity to do so, because to get ourselves ready for Ramadan, so that way when the month comes, your slate is nice and clean. The same thing if you have same thing if you have fard salawat to make qada of. In the winter time is short, not as long. You have opportunities, mashallah, where you have a spare hour, whatever else, you can make these fard salawat up, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you in this regard. Now, the kitab that we're returning back to, Ahwal Abi Umar al-Maqdisi, the life and times of Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, by Imam Diyauddin al-Maqdisi rahimahullah. We're on Unit 5, and our page is 63. Unit 5 is mentioning his intelligence and effort in the religion. Imam Diyauddin al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, he says of our Sheikh Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, he says, I heard my maternal uncle, the Imam, the scholar, Muwaffaquddin ibn Qudama, say one day, when we came from Jerusalem, we were making our way to the Qadi ibn Asrun with my brother. This is Abu Umar al-Maqdisi. We heard his dars on difference of opinion. Then we pulled away from him as some of the people found fault with us while we were passing them by. The people said to us, you have become Ash'aris. My maternal uncle said, the Qadi met my brother one day and said to him, why have you stopped putting together works? My brother said to him, they say that you are Ash'ari. The Qadi said, I am not an Ash'ari, but if you impart to me a sunnah, there is no one like you that I have seen to lead the people. He also said, you have indeed become an imam of the people. Now, there's an important point that needs to be kept in mind. The Ash'aris are a jama'ah within Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. They're a jama'ah within them. Their patron saint is the Sheikh, he's sometimes referred to as the Sheikh of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, rahimahullah wa rada. His death is around 330, some reports say 329 Hijri. The reason for this difference is because I want to speak a little bit about the fourth age. In the first 3 generations, the Muslims had been of one accord theologically, not bringing any philosophical matters into religion. They felt there was no point bringing these matters into religion. In the fourth age, Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari had come out of one of the astray groups, and a large body of people had come out with him. His mission and his job was to try to the best of his ability to look at what parts of Neoplatonist Greek philosophy, what parts of Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Archimedes, these great philosophers that would later influence Europe, how much of this could be reconciled to Islam. His mission was to go through there and whatever could be reconciled, to try to reconcile it. Before he could complete this monumental mission, he breathed his last and went back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But his students after him continued on this tradition. They carried on this tradition, systematizing his discussions, his methods, until in the year around the 440s of the Hijri, they coalesced this into a jama'ah, an entire school known as the Ash'ari or the Ash'aris. This is a way of explaining principles within certain areas of theology of the Muslims. Al-Qadi wa Ya'la, who was one of the first to document the crystallization of this jama'ah, referred to them as being from Ahl Sunnah, although we differ with them in some branch issues. So they're from Ahl Sunnah. So this jama'ah that you're hearing about, the reason why he pulled away from them is because Imam Abu Umar al-Maqdisi and Muwaffaq bin Qudama, they were cautious about the use of philosophy in Islam and in theology. So they preferred not to use it. They preferred not to use it. But they did not consider those people anything except as being from Ahl Sunnah, and they differed with them. When we think of famous people from the ranks of the Ash'aris, I will give you names of great people. People such as Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, who died 676 Hijri. He used that methodology of explaining the creed. Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he used that methodology of explaining the creed. Imam Ahmad al-Rifa'i, Imam Hujjatul Islam al-Ghazali, Jalaluddin al-Rumi. These are people that use this methodology in explaining affairs to the Muslims. Sa'ad ad-Din al-Taftazani, who, if he's not the greatest scholar to come out of Afghanistan, he is certainly one of the greatest to have ever come out of Afghanistan. Mulla Ali Qari, who, although Maturidi, used the methodology of the Sharia to explain this. So these are great scholars who had the same methodology in the foundations, but in some branch issues they differ. So when we see these differences of opinion occurring among the scholars, there is no hostility. It's to do with methodologies in preserving this knowledge. Methodologies in preserving knowledge. We return on Diyauddin al-Maqdisi. The Imam rahimahullah says, one day we were in the company of my maternal uncle, Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, in one of the villages around Damascus. He said, come here so that we might recite together the text of Al-Khiraqi. We recited it, and he said to me that day, it took me 1 year to read it. He had memorized it in that time, and he used to write it down from his memory. Now, this issue of Al-Khiraqi, the book of Al-Khiraqi, Imam Al-Khiraqi is Abu al-Qasim Al-Khiraqi, who died 334 Hijri, rahimahullah. I want to mention a little bit of something about him. Imam Abu al-Qasim Al-Khiraqi wrote a small book called Al-Mukhtasar. Al-Mukhtasar. It covered some 2,300 explicit masail in fiqh. Everything from the water that we use to purify ourselves all the way to giving witness in court. His mission in writing this book was to try to write a small enough text that could be used by everyone. The books at that time, and a little bit before, not only wrote down the particular point of fiqh, but included all the ayat, all the ahadith, the explanation of the narrators. For a layman, this was a heavy load to bear. So scholars realizing this began to take the evidences out of the books and just write down the points so that the basic people could take them down. Abu Qasim al-Khiraqi rahimahullah wrote his Al-Mukhtasar. Sharing the same time period with him is another Imam you may have heard of, Imam al-Quduri, who writes the Mukhtasar al-Quduri, which is the Hanafi way of writing down the smaller text, taking all the text and evidences out. So each school of fiqh used the same methodology, each one. And the mission was to make the text accessible. Now, when you studied this text, you had to study it for about a year. To do what? To read the text with a teacher, number one. Number two, to understand the evidences behind the text, and number 3, to memorize it. To memorize it. Now there have been, on Khiraqi's commentary, there have been some 400 commentaries written on his Mukhtasar. 400. The most famous of which is this kitab here known as Al-Mughni, which was written by Imam Muwaffaq ibn Qudamah. Al-Mughni is some 14 volumes. It's 14 volumes. In order to explain Al-Khiraqi, which is 2,300 masail, the amount of masail to explain it made the book balloon up to 8,885 masail in order to explain it. There's a huge amount of work that went into this. So when we talk about him reciting together the text of Al-Khiraqi, they're reciting the text to memorize it and learn it, and also taking what benefits they can from the text. And he says it took him a year to read it. Now, as a methodology, he'd memorized in that time and used to write it down from his memory. Now, I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. In the texts that you'll study from certain teachers, they not only have you read the text, but they have you write it down. One of the very first texts I wrote down was Bayan as-Sunnah by Imam Abu Ja'far Al-Tahawi rahimahullah. You may have known it as Aqidah Tahawiyah. The first page my teacher gave me was the introduction. And he had us read it. And he said to us, all of us in the group, he said, I want you to read this 500 times. So we went away and we read the page 500 times till we memorized it. We then come back to the teacher and we say, memorized it. He said, you've memorized it? You read it 500 times? Yes. So we recite it to him. And the teacher would say, okay, you've memorized it, now write it down. So now you have to go away and write it down from memory. So I brought the page back to my teacher. And he looked at the page, he said, that's not how it looks in the book. Because I'm thinking, just write it down. Not thinking it's got to be exactly like in the book. So I had to have the paragraph indentations as well. So I went away, I brought it back. And he said, that's not the last word on the page. The last word on the page is marboob. First page is hada. Last word is marboob. Went away again. Come back. Give it to him again. He said, what? No page number? Go away. Come back. He said, why aren't the paragraphs ending on the right words like in the book? Go away. This was 7, 8, 9 times this happened. And you start to get irritated. But you don't understand at the time. You're just doing what you're told. So I said, this time I'm not going to mess around. I'm really going to write this down. So I made sure I sat and I looked at the page. I scrutinized every aspect of the page. And I wrote it down to where the paragraphs, each new paragraph is indented. And I indented it. Where the paragraph ended, I ended it. If there were commas, punctuation marks, I used them. The dots on all the harakat, I used them. And the page number at the bottom. Now, I'd spilled something on the book. I can't remember whether it was Nido or something else. And there was a blotch. I scribbled in that area to symbolize that blotch. And I brought it back. And my teacher said, that's good. Now, you're on page 2. So I had to go. The point, when I asked him about this, he said, not only that you know this isn't that you can regurgitate it. It's that if you've memorized it and you can reproduce it, word for word, that lets me know that you know it. That's the same methodology that was used for Khiraqi in that time. So it's not unknown. You'll find this is popular in Mauritania, in Ethiopia, in the Gambia, in Senegal, in South Egypt, Northern Sudan, Yemen. You'll find a lot of those places. Syria sometimes, but sometimes not. But this methodology of looking at the kitab, memorizing it, and digesting the information is because it becomes part of you. And so the kutub that I've memorized, it's like they're part of me to where you can't get rid of it because you've memorized it the same way as the Qur'an. So it's like you know these ulama like they're members of your family. So when someone speaks to me about Muwafiq al-Din al-Qudama or Hajjawi, to me it's like speaking of my father or speaking of my uncle or speaking of my mother because I know them that intently. It's like I hear the tone of their voice by the words that I hear. I understand their dialect by the words that I hear. This is the depth that happens to you when you memorize. Imam Diyauddin al-Maqdisi rahimahullah, he goes on to say, Allah had brought together for him, Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, deep knowledge of fiqh, inheritance, grammar, along with zuhud, actions of goodness and fulfilling the needs of the people. He used to recite the Qur'an in the narrative of Abu Amr. And I also heard him reciting in some of his optional prayers Qur'an in the narrative of Nafi'. Now, these are different ways that the Qur'an might be recited. So, there are some altogether 14 ways that someone might recite the Qur'an. Some 14. And these people have learned from the Sahaba, who learned from the Prophet ﷺ, who allowed these different qira'at. So, many of you will already be familiar in Surah Al-Fatiha, Maliki Yawmiddin. This is the qira'at that those of you who are living in the English-speaking world, you've heard this. Right? This is known as Hafs an Asim. This is the narrative of Hafs from Asim, this qira'at. But sometimes you will also hear Maliki Yawmiddin. This is Warsh and Qalun from Nafi'. Right? These are correct as well. Right? These are sound as well. If you go to Yemen, instead of hearing in certain parts of Yemen, instead of hearing Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. This is Hamza. You will hear these qira'at. What you're hearing is not a lisp, or the person has cleft palate, or they didn't listen in Qur'an class. You're hearing different qira'at. Those that are able to do so, do so. If one contents himself with one, that's sufficient to know. Imam al-Maqdisi says, I heard Abu Muhammad Mas'ud ibn Abi Bakr al-Maqdisi saying, we were in a town, and he named it, and I made salah with them and saw a youthful man that had not made salah. I said to the people, what's going on? Why is he not making salah with us? They said, this one here, he's from the rulers of the Ismailiyah. Abu Muhammad al-Maqdisi further said, so it was agreed that I would mention to him something about the salah and encourage him to do it. The man said, I don't know about that. So I said, I will teach you. So I taught him the shahada, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, how to make ghusl, and then he did so. The youth then came, made salah, and never left it after that point. The people of the village witnessed this and were greatly surprised at the turn of events. They said to me, this is the one that married his brother's wife while she did not complete her iddah. He only left her for 10 days in her iddah after the death of her husband and then married her. She asked the husband for confirmation and he said, yes, that is true. So I went to the Sheikh Muwafiq al-Din al-Qudama and he said, let him leave her alone until she completes her iddah. Then the Sheikh Muwafiq al-Qudama asked about me, and they also had a gathering about the particular issue. Each one present said that she is requested to undergo an iddah. The Sheikh Abu Umar al-Maqdisi responded, indeed, if the woman has become Muslim at around the same time that he has, she has no need for an iddah. Her ruling is like that of the idol worshippers. Imam Muwafiq al-Qudama said in reply, indeed, that is the ruling, as these people are neither Muslims nor are they people of the book. So the next time we headed to the village, I asked the former Ismaili man about the woman, and he replied that she became Muslim at the time of his Islam. I said in response, well then, there's no need for an iddah in that case. Now, this is to do with a principle that the groups that are outside of Ahl Sunnah, of the 72, in general, they are considered kuffar in general, although individually they're examined by a case-by-case basis. Because all of these 72 came out of Ahl Sunnah. Now, the Ismailiyah, who were they? The Ismailiyah are a jama'ah of the Shia. The Shia split into some three camps. The first are the Ja'fari or Imami Shia, who believe that there are 12 Imams. Muhammad al-Askari is the 12th, and he's waiting to re-emerge at the end of time. The second are the Sab'iyya, known as the Seveners. And they've broken into groups such as Agha Khanis, the Wudi Bahra. There's the Wudi Bahras here in Nottingham. There's the Wudi Bahra in Leicester. The Agha Khanis, the Wudi Bahra, Alawiya or Nusayriya, that's in Syria. So the rulers of Syria, they're Nusayriya, Ismailiyya. There's many of them in Turkey. So those people are Ismailiyya, these type of groups. Okay? And then the third are called the Zaydiyya. The Zaydiyya are mostly in Yemen. So the Houthi, when you hear about the rebellion between the Al Saud family fighting the Houthis in Yemen, the Houthis, they are Zaydis. The Ismailiyya believe that of the Imams, there should be an Imam in every era who is the manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every time. They believe that those who practice the five pillars in the way that we know them are not truly realizing the hidden aspect of the five pillars. And so they believe that there are other esoteric elements to the five pillars and other beliefs such as this. Sometimes they deny punishment of the grave, sometimes they do not. Some of them hold that idea is in the clouds and he shall come again. There are many things such as this. So this is why when Abu Umar al-Maqdisi came to the man, it was brought to his attention, he invited the man to Islam. Because some of the beliefs are so grotesquely hideous, so downrightly dastardly, so irredeemably hideous and wrong that the person has to repent from those beliefs, make shahada, make ghusl, and come into Islam again. Unit 6, the Imam's aspiration, dedication to people and family. The Imam, rahimahullah, was my maternal uncle, and he would carry the family and companions along with him. Whoever among them traveled, he would take them with him, and he would make supplication for the travelers and for the rectification of the states of the people. The people would also come to him in regard to their disputes when judgments were required and so forth. He would resolve matters between them, bringing things to good and indicate the benefit in general and in specific for both the laity and the elite. It did not matter whether this was to do with the matters of riverways, professions and trades, water, and the byways and highways. The people had much reverence and respect for him. This is to do with the fact that a sheikh that the people follow, when someone has reached the level of imamship where they can be a leader among people, they can answer questions on a wide body of topics. These are the highest class of people known as marja'. Marja' is a shortening of maraji' al-taqlid wal-ittiba'. That means they're the authorities of imitation and following. These are the people that they can speak in the ummah's affairs on a global level. On a global level. So these are the people that you do not ask about your wudu or your ghusl or things. You ask these people about, for example, what do we do about Gaza? What do we do about what's going on in Iraq? What do we do about the East Timor situation? You ask those people those questions and they speak with one voice. Globally they speak. And so he was one of these people. So the people came to them with their disputes, whether it was professions and trades, riverways, water, byways, and highways, because it was the job of these people to answer these detailed questions. I asked my maternal uncle, Muwaffaq ibn Qudama, about him, and my maternal uncle wrote a letter to me and had it read out. So now, Imam Muwaffaq ibn Qudama, he's Shaykh al-Islam, one of the mujaddids of this religion. He says about his elder brother, he says, my brother and our Shaykh, he raised us, taught us, and watched out for our needs. When there was any gathering of people, he was like their father. And he always watched out for their needs and put right their affairs. If any of them was absent from his family or the like, the sheikh would get up and find out what happened to him. And he was like my father, rahimahullah. And he would keep away from the carnal matters of the earthly life and their aspirations. Although Sheikh Abu Umar was ill a great deal of the time, he carried on. There was no way to resolve the matters of the family except through him. He is indeed the one who made hijrah with us. We traveled with him to Baghdad, and he is the one who stood up to build a house. And when we returned to Baghdad, we were all married. He also built for us our outer residence and courtyard separate from the school. He was quick to head out into offensive battles, and he never lagged behind when any opportunity was present or presented to march out to battle. Now, this statement is to do with the fatherly influence of Abu Umar al-Maqdisi. Abu Umar al-Maqdisi was not the father of the family. Their father was Ahmed ibn Qudama. But the Sheikh Ahmed ibn Qudama, rahimahullah, he died. And the one that took over the family was Abu Umar al-Maqdisi. So he made sure everyone got married. If people needed to travel, he traveled with them. If there were any family issues, he resolved them. He stepped in as the eldest brother, because he's the eldest brother of Muhammad ibn Qudama. He stepped in and filled the spot where his father would have been, and acted as the father to everyone else. To do that is a huge responsibility. The reward is massive, but so is the burden. I was raised by 3 men in my family: my grandfather, my father, and my uncle. And recently, I was put into a position to where I have to answer and speak on affairs that normally I would not have been consulted on. So when my father, my grandfather, my uncle were alive, my mother's response was, he doesn't know anything, what are you asking him for? So one of the times I had a laptop open and I was answering some questions. And my mother said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just answering some questions people are sending me. What are they asking you questions? You don't know anything. I breastfed you. What are you talking about? Why are you answering questions? Who are you? Who are you to answer questions? So she would ask me questions to ask a particular mufti from Egypt. And so I would ask him, he's like, why are you coming to me with these things? You know the answer to this. Okay, listen, I'll ask you. You confirm the answer that I give you, and I'll say, yeah, he said this. So that way I'm not lying, but also I'm coming back and answering the question. He said, why do you keep coming to me? I have to. Well, with my uncle, rahimahullah, going, now all of a sudden, my mother has taken on, and other people have called me and asked me to answer questions. Now I'm in a position where I've become like the family mufti, because I'm expected to answer questions. So people will call me and say, there's a dispute with land. We're going to go over there with shovels and sort this out. Hey, listen, before you go over there with shovels or with whatever accoutrements and weapons you're about to use, before you do that, let me say what I'm going to say. And if you're not satisfied, then we take it to the tribal stuff. Because the law of Saloon, the Bedouin Arabs, is still in effect for us. So before you use the law of Saloon, can we use the Qur'an before this in the Sunnah? Yes. Okay. You listen to them, you hear them out, you resolve their issues, because some of these people are people who cannot read. Some of the people I deal with, because they were busy in their lives, stacking wood, building a living, they didn't get time to read and finish school. So they trust in you as the family mufti to get this stuff done. So when I answer a question, I have to be very careful. And when people are like this, you have to be careful what you tell them, because they'll take it on board. Oh, it's literal. Abu Ja'far, my nephew, he said it's okay to do this. That means kill him. No, I never said that. But they will take it on board and go do it. So when you step in as the leader of a family, because they need you to step in, you have to be careful, because you are carrying a heavy load. A heavy, heavy load. So understand, Abu Umar al-Maqdisi is carrying this massive load. Now, some of you here may be entrusted with this if you haven't already. It may already happen to you where sometimes the parents have to go somewhere and they say, when we're not in charge, you're in charge. So you get left with charge of things. You have to be careful not to abuse it. My elder brother, he was the one when he was alive, rahimahullah, he would be in charge of whenever my parents left to look after us. But when you're young, sometimes he would abuse his authority because he's younger. He's 8 years ahead, but he'd be younger, so he'd tell us that now that our parents are gone, you are my prisoners. Shine my shoes. Bring me my clothes. And we had to call him Sayyid and things like this, master and all these other types of things. Sit down, get up, and all these type of things. Never look me in the eyes, right? He had to say all these things because it was an abuse of his authority. But as he got older later, he understood that those abuses are not the way you wield authority. So understand when you're in a position where you have to be in charge, you were chosen to be in charge because they thought you were the best one to do it. And they thought you were the best one to do it because you exhibited the characteristics. They didn't choose you except that they believed that. So make sure that you hold up that end. I heard Abu al-Abbas Ahmad ibn Yunus saying, the Sheikh Abu Umar had a great aspiration. When they came together for the building of the Grand Masjid, meaning the one including the school, he started out constructing the masjid and the school, and nothing distracted him from the task at hand. I heard his son, the Imam Abu Muhammad Abdullah, saying, the Sheikh was visited one day by a woman who complained that her brother had been imprisoned and was suffering harm. As she recounted the events, her complaints were so heavy on him that he fell down faint due to the matter and had to be carried home. This was on account of the tenderness of his heart and strong desire to assist the village and his people. So he felt the same pain they felt. He felt the same heaviness that they felt because he wasn't distant from them. These people that are in charge of the Ummah's affairs, they are in charge of their affairs and they think of the Ummah's affairs. They remember the Ummah's affairs and they reflect on the Ummah's affairs, and they're touched like how we're touched. They're bothered like how we're bothered. I saw in the handwriting of the Imam Abu al-Hasan Ahmad ibn Ubaidullah ibn Ahmad, radiallahu anhu, making mention of his uncle Abu Umar. Someone mentioned to Sheikh Abu Umar that the unbelievers had gathered at Taneen. He was standing at the time and collapsed out of fear and worry for the Muslims and concern for their affairs. Abu Muhammad ibn Yunus narrated to me and said, I spoke to Sheikh Abu Umar on account of the dispute in the collective from the people in Jerusalem and said, you could go to them and I believe that they will follow your lead and resolve this matter. He said, very well then, I will go. So I traveled with him from Damascus to the mountains of Nablus, and the Sheikh rectified matters between the people. So this shows you that the Sheikh, he felt fear for the affairs of the Muslims, how they suffered, what they lost, the difficulties, because understand that the Sheikh Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, he died 607 Hijri, rahimahullah. In the year 589 is when they recover the Holy Land. It's when they recover. So during this time, all these battles and all these things are happening. The Franks have swept down from the European peninsula, where we're currently residing. They've swept down from there and tried to control that area. But the Imam Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, Muwafiq al-Din al-Qudama, Imad al-Din, Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi, they later take this area in 589 Hijri. And they set in place, and I want you to give this a good ear, from 589 Hijri, they set in place a process in which there would not be another major conflict in that area for the next 800 years. So let's put this together then. Imam Muwafiq al-Din al-Qudama, rahimahullah, he dies 620 Hijri, which is AD 1223. There's not a major conflict in that area until General Allenby arrives in 1919, AD 1919. That's 800 years with no major conflict. There was no conflict in that area. To the point that the Ottomans, when they took over, they actually lowered the walls because they said there's no reason to have the city fortified like this. So when you hear some low-level individual in the news saying, those people over there have been fighting for thousands of years, you know that's nonsense. Because for 800 years, it was quiet. This is after 250 years of invasions from the Crusades, which we won. In the Muslim West, we had 500 years of invasions from the Spanish Inquisition, which we won. And we're going to win these as well. Don't make any doubt about these things. The fact that we went through all of these invasions and still produced millions of volumes of books on science, math, fiqh, can you imagine what we would have done if we hadn't been messed with? This is us being messed with, being invaded and having to figure it out. If we'd been left alone, subhanAllah, what could we have done? But Allah blesses the believers. I heard the Imam Abu Ahmed Muhammad ibn Ahmed ibn Ismail al-Maqdisi saying, I saw a man sitting in the eastern portion of the house, and I gave salam to him, and I knew this man. Some time passed, and the man mentioned Sheikh Abu Umar, and he wept. I said, what makes you cry? He said, I weep on account of the fact that he's left me, and I'm all by myself. I said, well, he is coming back, is he not? The man said, yes, that is true. Now this mentions the love and respect that the people have for the scholars, that they don't like to be far from them. When I was still in Mahad, I wasn't full-time in Nottingham until AD 2004. I used to, at great personal expense to myself, every Eid al-Fitr and every Eid al-Adha, get on the National Express and go to London. On the night of, I think like 1 or 2 nights before Eid, I would get on the National Express and go, I don't want to be here, I want to go down there. Because I wanted to be around there with my teachers and what was going on there. That's how much of a tight connection I had with them. Very, very tight connection. And when your teachers have a tight connection with you, it's one of the things that you hold on to. Because those people, the connection with them is a connection to the Sunnah. And the connection to the Sunnah is a connection to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, one of the times when I was in class for Manad al-Sabil, which is a fiqh kitab we're going through, one of our teachers, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Rashid, Hafidullah, he was looking at the people because he is as new to technology as I am, and he makes the similar mistakes that I make. But he was looking at those who were in the room on the Zoom call, and for some reason he saw my name, and he said, and he called my name in class. I thought, I didn't have my hand up. He didn't see the electronic hand up, nothing. I said, why would he call on me? My hand's not up. He has his designated readers. There's 2 readers in class, one for reading and one for turning the page. I'm not either of those. My job is to sit, to gather information. He tells me what the research points are. I disappear. Then I return the next week like a phantom. That's my job. For some reason, he called on me. And he said, brother. And he just mentioned me. So I was like, okay, I've got to unmute. So I unmuted. He said, how are you doing? I was like, alhamdulillah, I'm doing fine. So I'm thinking, I'm going to get exposed. Something's going to happen to me. Why am I being called on? He says, yes, what part of Egypt are you from? So I mentioned, well, it's at the bottom near the Sudan border, a place called Aswan. Within Aswan, there's some villages. Inside there's a place called Qaryat Faris. Okay, all right. I've got a sheikh from where you're from. He's my sheikh in Arabic grammar. SubhanAllah. But he just wanted me to know that, to just have that connection between you, to let you know that I see you guys. I know each one of you, because the rest of them are from where he's from. And so their accent's the same. My accent when I was speaking was different. It's like, oh, this guy from. So he's like, let me just try to show that we're together. So that connection that you have with teachers, or a teacher, right, is important because it has that connection. For some people, the teacher will be their parents or their father, or what have you. Alhamdulillah, that's not bad, that's good. Because that means you have greater access. If you have a parent that knows about the shara and they can answer, that's excellent, because you have regular access to them. But if the teacher is far away, then you have to take more effort to get to them. It was also narrated to me that the Sheikh Abu Umar al-Maqdisi used to walk to Dair al-Bayatima, and he would blend in with the needy there and give sadaqah to them. Meaning, when he blended in, meaning he looked like the rest of them. His clothes didn't look extravagant. He didn't stand out from the people. He didn't make sure to let them know that I've arrived. And this is something from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that when he sat amongst the people, it's mentioned in Imam Suyuti's collection, that he sat amongst them and one could not tell that from his clothing that he was different to the people. He was just among them. When Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and this shows you the humility of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is in a Sirat al-Nabawiyyah by Imam Hisham. Many of the Sahaba in Al-Madinah had never seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but they had iman in him. They'd never seen him though. The people that brought them Islam were two sheikhs. Abu Umama As'ad ibn Zurara, known as Abu Umama, he established the first Jummah, not the Prophet ﷺ. He was sent to establish the first Jummah, and Mus'ab ibn Umayr. They'd never seen the Prophet ﷺ. Never seen him. But they had iman in him. Imagine this. When he arrives with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, they don't know which of the two are which. Because they've never seen either of them. And that tells you how noble Abu Bakr as-Siddiq must have looked, radiallahu anhu. Because they can't tell which one's which. But they're standing under the shade of a tree. And so they don't want to approach them for fear of addressing the wrong one as Ya Rasulullah and saying, so they don't want to lower the rank of the Prophet ﷺ by accident or exalt Abu Bakr more than he's supposed to be. So we'll just hang back here until one of the people that's from Mecca goes up. So when Mus'ab and the others went up, this must be the Prophet ﷺ. This is the situation. So it's the respect that they had for them, the rank that they had for them, that they blended in among the people. You want to do the same thing? If people feel that they can be close to you and blend in, then people can ask the questions that they know that they need. When I first came to this city or this hamlet, I didn't just start teaching. I didn't just do that. I had to be introduced to this community. Why would you have to be introduced? Because they don't know me. I had to establish things. Other people would view it as annoying, but I saw it as a fail-safe mechanism. So when I was first introduced to this community, two imams sit me down and say, brother, we are all from Ahl Sunnah, but we need to ask you some questions. Okay, alhamdulillah. So they asked me where I was from, who I studied with, what my fiqh was, all these things. Once they learn that, they're satisfied. Now, for the first 6 months I'm here, everywhere I go, I have to be treated like at-Tufayli. At-Tufayli is the house guest that shows up and everyone points and says, did he come with you? No, he didn't come with me. Did he come with you? That's at-Tufayli. We call this the Tufayli. No one knows who brought him. That's what I was for 6 months until finally, okay, you're okay. Now we trust you to teach us, to teach our children, to be around us. This to some people can be viewed as annoying, but it's a good thing. Because if I'm going to be teaching your children, I'm going to be teaching you. This is knowledge that if it is wrong, you'll go in front of Allah with wrong knowledge. If it is right, you go in front of Allah with right knowledge. Once that was established, now I could go amongst the people. But make sure that when you go amongst the people that you aren't so different to them, because you're going, if you're from a different nation, you're going to be different. But make sure that you don't seem unapproachable. Up until this time, I do not believe anyone has seen me as unapproachable. People have approached me at Asda, at Sainsbury's, Lidl, anywhere that I could be approached, I have been approached. And there's always that uncomfortable silence when they say, are you Brother Abu Ja'far Al-Hanbali? I'm like, yeah, because I'm not sure what's coming after that. It could be, listen, I got questions, or it could be you, and then it starts. I don't know. So there's that uncomfortable few seconds in the beginning, yeah, and then you wait for a second to find out. You look at their hands, are they in their pockets, are they clutching a weapon? But you don't know. But this comes from the fact that people feel that they can approach you. And when you carry this knowledge, if people feel they can approach you, there's benefit in that. You don't want to be too standoffish. But then the response after that someone could give is, well, wait a minute. Aren't people who are teachers and scholars supposed to have a certain amount of respect that you feel this, in Arabic we call it haiba. There's a respectful fear that you have of them. That's true. But that will also come in time. That will come in time. But the first thing is they have to approach you. And if they see that you have the knowledge that's truthful and you're truthful in the knowledge you're conveying, the haiba, that will grow. But they have to all first feel that they can come to you. And if they don't feel that they can come to you, they can't approach you, then you thinking that, they're avoiding me out of reverence. No, it's dread, actually. It's actual dread. Or dislike. Because we don't know you, we can't identify with you. And that's something to keep in mind. That's the same thing that children do. If anyone is ever taught in a school, what's one of the things that children do? They say, where do you live? What do you like? Why? They're trying to identify with you. Then when they find out, oh, he lives in my neighborhood, all of a sudden what you're teaching them, it goes in easier. You had to tell the guy to sit down 27 times, but now that he knows that you live in the same neighborhood, he goes straight down after the first. Why? Because he identifies with you. So when a teacher says, sir, where do you live? Shh, be quiet, no questions right now, whatever else. All right. Then he doesn't identify with you. There's a barrier that's there. Same thing with teaching ilm. When you teach ilm, if you put a barrier, it's hard for people to digest the knowledge. Not because the knowledge isn't true, but because they can't identify. Then the teacher may say, the people, they're not ready for the knowledge, they're distant. I give them the book and the sunnah. They're rebellious to Qur'an and sunnah. No, it might just be you. Sometimes it might just be you because you've made it in this way to where they feel like we can't talk to this person. So keep this in mind because you may not be teaching like this, like as I am. You might not be teaching in a school, but if you have children, you'll be their first teacher. So you want it to be to where, as a parent, your children can come to you with anything. Your siblings can come to you with anything. If they don't think they can come to you with anything, they'll ask someone else. Unit 7, the Imam's generosity and lack of seeking things. Imam Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, rahimahullah, used to give his family his clothes, and he would be resident at the mountain a long portion of his life. The mountain was indeed wide, and the people would teach there in different places. I did not know any place he knew of, except that there was some benefit for the entire congregation there. I heard his son, the Imam, saying he would take whatever he had with himself and give it to his family and others. He spent a lot of time giving sadaqah, using some of his clothes, and this left him wearing tattered clothes. He had a jubbah in the winter without anything under it, and he gave some sadaqah in order to have some undergarments to cover himself with. In spite of this, he spent a lot of his time without any sirwal as well. Now, the sirwal is the type of clothing that you'll know of as the shalwar qamis. But the shalwar is the lower garment, but the sirwal was a little bit thinner, and the string used to be longer. When the sirwal first came into the Muslim world, the Muslims didn't know what to do because most of the Muslims in the early generations were wearing the izar, which is the long waist garment that you wrap over with. Most of them were wearing that. When the sarwal came in, some Muslims started wearing that instead of the izar. Then Muslims started insisting, okay, well, we'll wear with the izar instead of that. And then later on, some Muslims said, we'll wear the sirwal or the shalwar under the izar because we have more protection in case the wind, because one of the things that you had is if you had a particularly thin izar, if the wind kicked up, your nakedness was exposed. But if we wear the shalwar or the sirwal under, then wrap the izar over, we're doing the sunnah and we have greater protection. In the case of his amama, it was a very long cloth of pure wool and neat pure wool. When anyone needed a portion of a cloth or a young child died and inquired and required a burial shroud, he would cut a piece of the cloth from his amama according to his need. Now what this meant is he had a very large amama. And so if anybody needed a piece of cloth or anything, he could cut a portion off from the du'ab here. He would cut a portion off from that, and his amama was so big, he could cut a portion off and it was enough to have a burial shroud for an infant or if someone needed a piece of cloth to wrap a tourniquet or to wrap an injury because his amama was so big. He would give his good clothes for sadaqah. Now this is important, and not as leftovers. So he didn't say, well, I don't wear this anymore, I don't really like it. Let me give this as sadaqah. No. He gave his best clothes, he gave his good clothes for sadaqah, and he would wear the leftovers. He once gave away his bed and slept on a mattress on the floor. He might have given a good thing for sadaqah while the people of his household needed it more than those who received it. When he returned from a long journey and he had something with him for his family, he would have something for his neighbors as well. So when he came back, he had toys or anything he brought with him. He would give not just to his family, but his neighbors, the people next door on this side, on his right, and then people on the next side on the left, right? And this sunnah, if you start implementing this practice of being charitable towards your people and your neighbors, the impact this has is huge. Everywhere I've ever moved in, I've always went next door to the neighbors to let them know that I moved in. They don't have to like me. They don't. They might be, they were standoffish initially because they don't know me. When I first moved in to the current place I'm at, my two children were with me. They were with me when I moved in. I bought a box of some cookies and a card. It was a welcome card. And I knocked on their door. And I had my telephone number and my name on there, and I said, I just moved in the neighborhood. I'm just letting you know. I'm just next door over here. I moved in, and I'm just letting you know that I'm here now. Oh, okay. Well, that's great. Everything else? Shook hands with the guy, greeted the woman, gave them a gift. So I just moved in over there. Okay, that's wonderful. Went to every neighbor. So there was one just up from here. So all my neighbors on all sides that were of 3 to 4 doors, I went to the neighbors so that way they knew I moved in. So when some outrageous incident happened, they came next door, they came to my house knocking on the door saying, are you okay? We heard this thing happen in the news. Don't worry, we won't let anyone do anything to you. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's comforting to know. But do you see what that did is, I was no longer thought of as, do you think he did it? It was, we have to protect him because he's one of the good ones. And being neighborly, if the impact that has on your neighbors is huge. I've been involved where I've had to help neighbors move something. I had to help a neighbor move a car. I had to help a neighbor with the mother. I had to help a neighbor with funeral arrangements. I've been involved in stuff because I've been neighborly. And being neighborly is really, really important. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him be good to his neighbors. It's from Bukhari Muslim. So we understand that that's a really important thing. Yes, but they're kuffar and these kafirs. What if they do this? What if they do that? Well, listen. Both of us have a job description. Muslim. Job description, Iman. Activities, Salah, believing in Allah, doing all types of good. Okay. Kafir. Job description, not having Iman. Activities, disbelieving in Allah, eating the haram, and engaging in haram activities from many times on end. Okay, so now that you know their job description, then don't expect too much. It doesn't mean that you can't have good relations with them because they're not Muslim. But you have to understand how to deal with people that are not Muslim. Right? I heard my father saying, whenever he returned from a long journey, he had something with him for his family, and he had something for the neighbors as well. I also wanted to mention that his thobe reached the middle of his shin, just above the ankle, while the sleeves of his qamis reached the wrists and did not go higher than that. So this shows he's a very modest man. He followed the sunnah, and he was a very modest man. So he didn't have it as a point of showing his arms above. When I was very young, I got someone that wasn't Muslim gave me some clothes and said, try these. They're similar size. And they were a pair of shorts. And the shorts rolled up way above my knees. I'm just at home with my parents. And I put them on and came downstairs. And my mom looked, and she was preparing something, and dropped the pot and turned around and yelled, why are your knees out? just yelled, because it's not our custom to do that, and also to have our feet uncovered in the house. Why are your knees out? And the yell was so loud, I remember it echoed. Because modesty is important. We hear modesty about ladies, but modesty for men is important too. It is important. Right? It's not just a cultural thing. Modesty for men is important. Right? I heard my father saying, we spent a great deal of time. We spent quite a bit of time in which the people of Ad-Dayr came to be part of the house of my brother. Your paternal aunt would cook, and all the men and women would eat from it. I just wanted to mention that when he brought something to his house, he divided it up among the laity and the elite. I witnessed this myself on more than one occasion. It was also mentioned by the Imam Bahauddin Abu Muhammad Abdul Rahman saying, when my mother died, my brother, sister, and I stayed in the house of the Sheikh Abu Umar, and we were under his care. He maintained us and treated us well. He never showed any evil towards us that changed our heart or mentioned any ill word towards me. Now this is from one of the big Imams of his time, Imam Bahauddin Abu Muhammad Abdul Rahman. He is Bahauddin al-Maqdisi. He died 624 Hijri. He is one of the people that helped liberate the Dome of the Rock and the Masjid al-Aqsa from the Crusaders. So the people in the army included Muwaffaq ibn Qudama, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, Abu Umar al-Maqdisi, Imad al-Din, and also Bahauddin al-Maqdisi. Bahauddin al-Maqdisi, one of the books that Muwaffaq ibn Qudama wrote is called Al-Umda fil Fiqh. It's a fiqh book. On the way to going to war, Bahauddin al-Maqdisi wrote a commentary on that book and finished it within a matter of days because they had to get ready to go to war. So he finished his commentary in a matter of days. Amazing story of this man. Amazing life. You see that Imam Abu Umar al-Maqdisi is not his direct family, but he took in Bahauddin al-Maqdisi like he was his family, his regular family. Because he treated the orphans, the poor, the indigent, all those people, he just took them in like they were part of his family. Because that's part of what you have to do when you're a leader among people. You take in people. You look after people. And you see to it that their needs are fulfilled. Unit 8, mentioning some of his statements. I heard the Imam, the Zahid, Abu Thana, Mahmud ibn Hammam, Mahmud al-Ansari, Jazahullahu Khaira, saying at the central masjid in Damascus. I heard the Sheikh Abu Umar rahimahullah say, the people say there is no knowledge except what is entered in with his companion towards the truth. However, I say that there is no knowledge except that which has entered into the grave with its companion. The Imam Abu Thana loved this statement very much and enjoyed using it. I heard his son, the Imam Abu Muhammad Abdullah, narrate from the wife of his father by the name of Abdul Rahman that the Sheikh Abu Umar, he used to say to them, if the giver of sadaqah did not know that he is more in need of the sadaqah than the recipient, the giver of the sadaqah does not benefit from his action. The people asked, how's that possible? He replied, it's due to the fact that when you do not give sadaqah, no one takes it from you. As far as the one asking for sadaqah, if you did not give it to him, then others besides you will give it to him. And this is how you did not get the benefit of the sadaqah. So this is important. When you give the sadaqah, you're more in need of the sadaqah than the recipient. Because the person in need, he's going to get his need wherever it can be fulfilled. But you're in need of purifying your wealth. You're in need of getting that barakah. You're in need of getting that blessing more than that person. And when you understand that, you give more freely. To the point that there's a hadith in Imam Suyuti's collection where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, whoever missed Jumu'ah for a valid excuse, let him give 4 dirhams. Right, that's like 5 pounds or something like that. Let him give that as sadaqah. Right, so you couldn't go, just because the day is a blessed day. So you weren't there for Jumu'ah? Okay, well, give something if you can. Give something if you can. I heard his son narrate from Abdul Rahman that she said to him, are you a zahid towards any one thing? He said, I'm a zahid towards the impermissible. I'm a avoider of the impermissible. She said, so then you love the pure and wholesome things. Is that correct? He responded to her, yes, but I don't take an abundance of it for myself. I heard someone narrate from the Imam Abu Umar the following statement. When the man speaks of all what occurs between him and his wife and family, then what is really the difference between him and the common people? Meaning that your private time is your private time. Your family's business is your family's business. That shouldn't go out all over the place. That should be kept within the family. And the zahid, the one that avoids the earthly dunyawi things, it doesn't mean that that person doesn't enjoy food or he doesn't enjoy clothing. It means that he does not forget that those items of clothing and that food, it's temporary. He gets the blessing and benefit from it, but he knows it's temporary. It's not forever. It's not forever. Unit 9, his family and other affairs. I heard my maternal uncle say to me some 2 years before his death, it's been 10 years, and I've had neither a wet dream, nor have I gained any weight. Now, this statement seems strange, but the reason why he's saying this is because he hasn't had a wet dream, meaning that he's not had the dream at night where you wake up and you have to make ghusl. And the reason why he's happy about that is because it means that he's able to get up and pray tahajjud without interruption. He's able to pray throughout the night without interruption. Because if you have one of those, you have to make ghusl, you've got to go through the whole thing with that. Okay, now you can start. But no, my night salah has not been interrupted. And I've not gained any weight, meaning I've not overfed myself. So if you maintain your weight, right? You've not overeaten, you've just taken on just what you need. So whatever your caloric intake is, some people count calories, right? They say, okay, well, I don't go over 2,000. Okay. Maybe on a Jum'ah I'll have 2,200. Okay, that's fine. But you don't waste. How do you waste food when you eat? Well, if you take in too much consumption, that food, it gets stored. If you store too much, you get too much chub. You get too much chub, you got to lose chub. Because you're not as fast, you're not as sharp, you're a little bit more sluggish and tired. Instead of getting up from a sitting position, you have to roll over like a turtle. Right? All these things go with when you have too much abundance. So you have to make sure to take in what you need. I also heard that he used to eat the same thing every day. He would eat half of it and give the rest to sadaqah. Right? So he had a very basic diet. I remember once, because I've been sleeping on the floor for such a long time, I had to go for a routine checkup to the doctor. I go to a yearly checkup, just as a matter of course, get my blood work done, things like this. And the doctor said, so what are your sleeping arrangements? They have to ask these basic questions. Oh, I sleep on the floor, use blankets and pillows. What on earth for? What would you sleep on the floor? Every human being deserves to have a bed. That is my bed. And the actual woman got worried. It's like, okay, is there like a next of kin or someone that we might need to speak to? If you're concerned, she gave me a card. If you're going through anything, if maybe something's happening at home where you're not being given, access to good bedding, we can help you. And I was thinking, subhanAllah. They're really worried that by not sleeping in a raised bed that somehow maybe someone took my bed from me. Maybe they stole it. Maybe they took my blanket. No, I'm okay. But for them, because that is so important to them, and I'm not saying it's haram to have a raised bed, it's not. But to them, it's so important that they view it that if you don't sleep on one, that you've lost out. You don't have anything. They're imagining that if they come into my house, there's no windows, it's open air. There's dogs running in and out. I've got a sheep tied up in the kitchen chewing grass. Their ideas of what they think I'm living like. I don't have carpeting or laminate flooring, there's just concrete. Where the area where I prepare my food, there's dirt. I mix the dirt, I mix that with my eggs, and then I boil them. They're thinking this is the life that I live. I'm not living in a hut. I just sleep on the floor. Because One of my teachers has said it helps you wake up for Fajr easier if you sleep on the floor. I just think, why would it help me wake up for Fajr easier? But I said, let me try it. And I tried it, and it did. And I'd always slept on the floor since I was very young, because when I was young, my parents had me stop doing it. And this may be something that may be a benefit to you. I would wake up sometimes at night, and I would be on the other side of the room. I go, how did I get on this side of the room? So I'd fallen out of bed, rolled over on the other side of the room. Once someone opened the door and it hit me on the head, and I thought, why are they hitting me in the door with the head? Well, I fell off the bed and rolled. So I'm moving when I'm sleeping. Well, since then, I decided, my parents said, sleep on the floor before you break your neck. Slept on the floor. Never looked back. University, I had to, because the bedding is prearranged and the furniture, at least in some parts of the University of Oregon, is bolted to the floor. So you can't move it. So I'm trying to move it, can't move it. High school, dormitory schools in high school that you go to, it's not bolted down, so I moved it out of the room. When I had an apartment, moved it out of the room. So these things were just a regular habit. If someone can get those blessings and reward, then it's there. It's not compulsory, but you get extra reward. It was narrated to me that he loved yogurt, and the people of the household would make it for him, and he would eat it. Then he started to set it down after that, a number of times without having eaten any of it. Someone asked him, so do you not like it anymore? He said, yes, I do still like it. There's nothing more beloved to me of the foodstuffs besides it. But out of my love for him, Allah alone, I've left it so that someone besides me might eat it. After that, he didn't taste again of the yogurt. Now, what we see from this is, these are acts of zuhud. Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, rahimahullah, who's one of his teachers, he said, if someone takes something that's permitted from Allah and gives it up for the sake of Allah, Allah will raise him in ranks and give him other goodness, because you're giving up something beneficial. So when I was Mahad, one of the brothers that was with us in class said, I have a terrible memory. I have a terrible memory. Don't keep saying that. It's not true. You're going to actually make it like that. Don't keep saying this. Like, no, I really struggle to remember things. And as we were around him, because you're students, you're lodged together, we would notice he regularly forgot his keys. He'd have his shoes in his hand, and he'd be, where are my shoes? I can't believe it. I think someone stole my shoes. No, look in your hand. Oh, what am I doing? Right, these types of things. He had his glasses on his head. Someone stole my glasses. And we're thinking, really? Is this what we're doing today? But this was a situation. So we said, he read that passage from Sheikh Abu Ja'far Al-Hanbali, and he said, I'm going to give up something for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, maybe Allah will repair my memory. What he gave up was pizza. Hold on. I'm not saying you have to, because I thought I saw some feet move. I'm not saying you have to. Just don't attack me. Wait. I'm not saying you have to, you better, you're going to get, I'm just saying he gave up pizza of all kinds. And after that, he started memorizing bunches of things. So he completed the Qur'an in 3 years. It took me 5. He completed 3 years. He completed a whole bunch of mutun, different texts, in like half the time of what it normally would take. And I credit it with the fact that he gave up something that's halal. He gave that to Allah in place of this. I give this up in the hope that you will give me this in response to it. So if you take something that's halal, that you normally take, that you might enjoy, and you want some additional blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you give that up for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will recompense you with huge blessings. I'm not telling you you have to. I'm not telling you you better. I'm just saying that blessings do come from that. So I say, أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم محمد رحيم ولا إله إلا الله. So now I want to open it up. It's the second time we open up for questions, if there are any. Tell me the slaves of Allah. Any questions from slaves of Allah? No? Okay. There are no questions. We'll close from here, inshallah, for our next time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all the believers. and we'll close with a dua. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا ورسولنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أجمعين يا رحمن الرحيم ولا إله إلا الله. اللهم اغفر لنا المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات والمحسنين والمحسنات والمجاهدين والمناقبات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين وذل الشرك والمشركين والذين ينصرونهم من أعداء الدين المنافقين والمرتدين. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وهب لنا ذرية صالحة. اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وهب لنا ذرية صالحة يا أرحم الراحمين. Oh Allah, we ask that you bless us with goodness and that you protect us in all of our affairs in this life and the hereafter. Oh Allah, we ask you protect us from the punishment of the grave. Allah, we ask you protect us from the questioning in the grave. Oh Allah, we ask you protect us from the questioning of Munkar and Nakir in the grave. Oh Allah, we ask you protect us from the wicked and the wicked high places that they're in when they're doing their wickedness. Oh Allah, we ask you have mercy upon the rightly guided scholars and the mujahideen. Oh Allah, we ask you give victory to the mujahideen wherever they may be. Oh Allah, we ask that you give victory to the mujahideen in every place they may be. Oh Allah, we ask that you bless the rightly guided scholars, give them goodness and protect them in these times of darkness. Oh Allah, we ask that you protect us and give us goodness and bless us until the day we meet you on the day where there is no shade but your shade. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا ورسولنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم أجمعين يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك إنه غفور رحيم يا أرحم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.